The Rose Window's Secret. The carriage rattled across the desolate moors as night descended, carrying Seraphine d'Aubray toward the looming silhouette that dominated the horizon. Even from miles away, the Cathedral of Saint Fleur commanded awe. Its spires, thinner than spears, yet impossibly tall, seemed to pierce the heavens. Arches layered upon arches, rising with reanent ambition, caught the dying light and trapped it like embers in stained glass. Flying buttresses stretched like skeletal wings, embracing the structure in a grasp that was both protective and imprisoning. In the deepening dusk, the tracery of the great rose window glowed faintly, as though the stones themselves remembered every candle that had ever burned inside. Seraphine drew her cloak tighter. She had been summoned to investigate a mystery not written in official letters, but whispered between lines. The cathedral's archivist, Etienne Marlot, had disappeared without a trace. For decades he had guarded the manuscripts in the vaulted library of Saint Fleur. His vanishing left behind locked doors, half-finished notes, and rumors that the man had uncovered a secret better left buried beneath centuries of dust. It was not her first investigation. The d'Aubray family, though of noble descent, had long since abandoned political power for subtler trades. Seraphine, with her intelligence and keen perception, had gained a reputation in certain circles for uncovering truths hidden beneath veils of superstition and silence. Yet this case was different. It had been the Archbishop himself who requested her presence, his missive marked by urgency, but careful not to detail what precisely the archivist might have discovered. The carriage stopped before the cathedral steps. Shadows clung to the statues carved along the western facade, saints, angels, grotesques, and demons, stone faces contorted in expressions both serene and despairing. The flamboyant tracery above the central portal formed curling flames in stone, a frozen fire that seemed almost alive in the flickering torchlight. Seraphine's heart tightened as she stepped down. This was a place built not only to exalt the divine, but also to remind mortals of the thin veil between salvation and ruin. Inside, the cathedral swallowed her in silence. Columns rose like endless trees, their ribs branching across vaults so high they seemed to disappear into darkness. Only the faint glimmer of moonlight through the stained glass relieved the gloom. She felt immediately that she was being observed, though no one was present. It was not hostility, but rather a waiting, as though the building itself expected something from her. A voice broke the stillness. "Mademoiselle d'Aubray." A man stepped from the shadows between the choir stalls. He was tall, pale, with hair the color of midnight, and eyes that gleamed in the candle's reach. He wore the dark robes of a canon of the cathedral, though the cut was finer than usual. His presence was both solemn and strangely magnetic. "I am Canon Lucien de Valery," he said, bowing slightly. "The Archbishop has entrusted me to guide you." Seraphine studied him, sensing an undercurrent beneath his composure. His words were courteous, but there lingered a tension in his gaze, as though he guarded knowledge not easily shared. "Then let us begin," she said. "Where was the archivist last seen?" He led her through labyrinthine passages, the air heavy with incense and the faint metallic scent of ancient stone. They descended narrow staircases into the belly of Saint Fleur, where the archives lay. The vaulted chamber was lined with shelves bearing manuscripts bound in leather, so worn the titles had vanished. The silence here was oppressive, broken only by the flutter of a candle flame. Etienne Marlowe's desk stood abandoned. Upon it, scattered papers revealed sketches of the rose window above the cathedral's nave. Notes crowded the margins, written in an increasingly hurried hand. One phrase appeared again and again, almost as a mantra. Lux in tenebris, latet. The light hides in darkness. Lucien watched Seraphine as she traced the words with her gloved hand. His expression darkened. "I warned him to cease his inquiries." He would not listen. "You believe he found something dangerous?" "I believe he woke something that was never meant to be found." Seraphine's curiosity deepened. She examined the sketches more closely. Beneath the rose window's tracery, Etienne had drawn hidden symbols, subtle geometries invisible to casual eyes. They formed patterns that seemed to twist inward like a labyrinth with no exit. "Has the window been altered in recent years?" she asked. "No, it has stood unchanged since the 13th century. Yet the archivist claimed that beneath its light he heard whispers, as though the very glass breathed secrets." That night, Seraphine insisted on seeing the window herself. They climbed spiraling stairs that seemed endless, each step narrowing as though testing her resolve. At last they emerged into the gallery above the nave, where the rose window loomed in magnificent silence. By moonlight its colors were muted, but its tracery of flame seemed almost to writhe. She felt drawn forward. The stone was cold beneath her fingertips, yet a faint vibration stirred through it, like the pulse of a slumbering heart. Lucien spoke behind her. "You must take care." The archivist believed there was a hidden chamber aligned with this window, concealed within the very walls. He claimed it was built by the masons who first raised this cathedral, a chamber meant to house something forbidden. "Do you believe him?" she asked. Lucien's eyes glimmered. "I believe faith and fear are often carved from the same stone." Their gazes lingered, a silence passing between them that was not merely professional. There was a gravity in Lucien's presence that pulled at her, as though the cathedral itself bound their fates. In the days that followed, Seraphine examined every manuscript Etienne had left. Hidden among sermons and records, she found a vellum fragment older than the cathedral itself. Its script, note, faint yet legible, spoke of an order of masons who believed that light was not solely divine but a double-edged force. They wrote of capturing shadows within glass, binding them in beauty to keep them from spreading. The rose window, then, was not merely a triumph of art, it was a prison. The more she read, the more the atmosphere of the cathedral weighed upon her. Statues seemed to shift when she was not looking. Echoes lingered longer than they should. At night, wandering alone with her lantern, she heard faint chants rising from nowhere, weaving melodies that wrapped around her thoughts like a net. One evening she returned to the gallery and found Lucien already there, gazing upon the window. Moonlight painted his features, sharp and ethereal, as though he too were carved from stone. "You are not surprised by any of this," she said softly. He turned, his expression unreadable. "Because I have felt it all my life. This cathedral was not merely built of stone. It was fed with devotion, fear, longing, human passions hardened into mortar. That kind of architecture does not sleep. And you, what part do you play in its story?" His lips curved into something between sorrow and yearning. "I am bound to it. My family has served Saint-Fleur for generations. Each of us inherits more than duty. We inherit affinity. Some would call it a curse. I cannot leave these walls for long, nor do I wish to. They have become part of me." Seraphine's breath caught. In his words was loneliness, deep as the vaults themselves. She understood suddenly that his intensity was not merely faith, but a tether to something greater and darker. Days bled into nights, and her investigation drew her deeper not only into the cathedral's mysteries, but into Lucian's presence. He was a man of discipline, but beneath the surface she glimpsed quiet longing, a fire suppressed yet not extinguished. And she, who had armored herself in reason and independence, felt her defenses waver. At last she discovered the archivist's final note, hidden in the spine of an illuminated psalter. It contained only a map, lines winding through the cathedral's foundations, leading to a mark directly behind the rose window. With lanterns in hand, she and Lucian followed the map. They descended once more into the archives, then beyond, through a door disguised as part of the masonry. Narrow corridors twisted upward until they reached a sealed arch hidden within the wall of the facade. The stones were carved with tracery so fine it seemed like lace petrified. Seraphine pressed the mechanism etched into its center, and with a groan older than memory, the wall shifted. The chamber beyond was small, circular, its walls lined with shards of stained glass, arranged in strange constellations. In the center lay Etienne Marlot's cloak, abandoned on the floor as though he had stepped out of it and vanished. On the far wall, aligned perfectly with the rose window, was a panel of glass not visible from outside. Unlike the glorious colors of the facade, this glass was black, swallowing light. Yet when Seraphine raised her lantern, faint figures moved within it, shadows of angels and demons entwined, wings and talons indistinguishable. Lucian's voice was hushed. So he found it. What is it? The other side of light. The Masons feared what they could not destroy, so they bound it here, behind beauty. The rose window radiates brilliance to the world, but here its twin consumes. Seraphine shivered. The shadows stirred as though aware of their gaze. A whisper rose, not from air, but from within her mind. A call, promising knowledge, power, eternity. She staggered back, but Lucian caught her. His touch was steady, grounding, though she felt a tremor in him as well. "You see now why he vanished," Lucien murmured. "Once the shadows find a voice in you, they do not let go easily." "Then we must seal this place," Seraphine said. He shook his head. "It cannot be destroyed, only guarded. That has been my family's task, and now, perhaps, yours." She met his eyes. There was both dread and longing there, a recognition that fate had entwined them in this secret. In that instant she understood. The romance of Gothic arches and soaring spires was not only architectural, it was human. The yearning to touch the infinite while bound in mortal stone. Together they withdrew from the chamber and sealed the door once more. The cathedral settled into silence, as though relieved the secret remained hidden. When dawn broke, the rose window blazed with light, casting colors across the nave like scattered jewels. Yet Seraphine saw it differently now. Beauty and terror were twinned, each giving meaning to the other. She remained at Saint-Fleur, not merely as investigator, but as guardian. And in the shadows of its vaults, in the glow of its stained glass, she and Lucien stood often together. Two souls bound by mystery, by danger, and by the strange unspoken romance of shared vigil. For some, loves are not declared in words or kisses, but in the silence of holding watch against the dark, knowing the other watches too. And in the heart of Saint-Fleur, the rose window kept its secret, burning with light that hid darkness, and darkness that gave light its meaning.